Hello? Okay. Good evening, everybody. I got to call the meeting to order. The hour has struck. I believe we have a quorum. I'll be serving as chair this evening as Mr. Costello has resigned. And don't take it personally, it has nothing to do with our function here, okay? He's got a life to live, and it's not including us right now. So I need to read this notice of recording. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on Channel 18 in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20. The committee must inquire whether anyone is taping this meeting and to please make their presence known. Anybody taping this meeting this evening? I see nobody. Thank you. So, Jim. Oh, we're going to go around and introduce ourselves, starting with Francis.
Francis Parks, Katuitt.
Carlos Barboza Hyannis.
Jennifer Williams, Osterville.
Amanda Converse, Merson's Mills.
Felicia Penn, Hyannis.
Cheryl Powell, Centerville.
Avery Revere, Barnstable Village.
Bob Twist, Osterville.
Lindsay Council, Centerville.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. Thank you for meeting again. This is, I believe, number eight for this LCPC. Before we get started, I know you guys got a very busy agenda. We've been doing a lot of outreach, a lot of data gathering, both quantitative and qualitative. But for the people watching at home, I did want to point everyone in the direction as to where you can find all the materials that the committee has in front of them this evening. So on barnstablelcp.com, barnstablelcp.com is kind of a wealth of knowledge there. There's really everything we've been tasked to do thus far, and all the notes and minutes and materials from all of those meetings. If you go to the document library on barnstablelcp.com, you can find basically the second section there is meeting materials. And if you go to our meeting this evening, March 30th, there's a click here, and you click that, and it will bring you to all the documents that the committee has this evening. And if you missed some in the past, you're welcome to go back to the past meetings. They're all there for your enjoyment. So with that, if we can go back to the PowerPoint real quick. Just quickly, just touch on our task for this evening. So topics for discussion will be key findings from the LCP survey, which will be brought to you by Bear Group. And then back into the development of a draft vision statement, which we've heard, again, we've taken all this information over the past 7 months and had the Bring It Together meeting, which we've heard further regarding priorities and values. And this evening, we welcome back our consultants who will be guiding us through a visioning process to get closer to that finish line of a vision that will bring us forward to the 2023 LCP and phase 2. And then after that, we'll go over briefly the existing conditions, products that have been provided to you, and a discussion about making that available for everyone to review and comment on. So with that, I'll hand it off to Alexi from Bear Group.
While you're doing that, I just want to make note that Sue Rohrbach has joined us. You want to introduce yourself, even though I just said your name? Tell us which village you're from.
I'm Sue Rohrbach. I live in Centerville, and I'm a member of the committee.
Thank you. All yours.
Thank you. So for those who haven't met me, I'm Alexis Santalata. I'm from Barrett Planning Group with Jill. And I just wanted to go over some of the key findings from the LCP survey. So the LCPC committee, you've seen kind of the broader results. We wanted to just pick a few points tonight to put in this presentation because I think it will help inform your discussion on the draft vision. But you do have the full survey results available as well. So one of the questions, just so you know, the numbering comes from the question number on the survey, so we're not just kind of jumping around, but there was a question on the survey about how certain factors how strongly they threaten the quality of life in Barnstable, and participants had the option of selecting no threat, some threat, or major threat. And so we wanted to look at, just the top 5 of things that were identified as major threats. And so you can see those top 5: declining water quality, climate change and sea level rise, traffic speed or congestion, loss of open space, and infrastructure, including water, sewer, utilities. So, you can see there, I know it's a little hard to see on the screen, but the green indicates no threat. So even for some of those things that are identified as a major threat, there were still participants who identified them as not a threat. So we then resorted to look at the things that were the top 5 things identified as not being a threat. And so access to goods and services, availability of employment opportunities, new commercial development, new housing development, and lack of access to health care. But again, you can see the yellow are participants who indicated that those things were a threat. So you can see, some kind of, differing opinions there. Those are just the top 5 that were identified as not a threat. The survey also asked about the kinds of future residential development that people would like to see in Barnstable in the future. So those are the top 5. We're trying to just focus on top 5 for these slides. So single-family homes was number 1 on the survey. ADUs was actually a write-in, and enough people wrote it in that it bubbled to the number 2 place. Housing for older adults, mixed uses, and townhomes were among the top 5. So you can see, the responses for other things: apartments, live workspaces, et cetera. Participants were also asked about non-residential development, and the top 5 that were identified: local retail stores and specialty shops, far and away was the top identified non-residential development. Entertainment, restaurants, agriculture and farming, and fishing and maritime opportunities were the top 5 identified. Participants were asked about Barnstable's top 5 strengths and weaknesses. So again, we kind of resorted this in 2 different ways. First, looking at the top 5 strengths. And so the things identified by participants were coastal resources, the community's reputation, village centers, downtown Hyannis, and location and access. So you can see for some of those things, the weaknesses is that blue color. Some of the things are kind of neck and neck. And so you'll see that on the next slide, where we resorted to look at the top weaknesses. So walkability was identified, pretty strongly, the most frequently as the biggest area for needing improvement. Downtown Hyannis, so that showed up on both as a strength and a weakness in the top 5. Housing costs, which if you look on the previous slide, they didn't make the top 5, but it was fairly close actually as a strength. So you can see those 2 perspectives there. Town government and services and commercial shopping areas. So those are the top 5 weaknesses that were identified. So we looked, pretty closely at things where there, was kind of an even split to see where there may be a little more kind of, difference of opinion. And so we just kind of calculated the ratio of how often something was identified as a strength versus a weakness. And so anything above a ratio of 1 means it was identified more often as a strength. And below 1, it was more often identified as a weakness. And, the closer it is to 1 means it was kind of an even split of how people viewed it. So downtown Hyannis, housing costs, natural environment, taxes, schools, those things were kind of the closest to that value of 1. In terms of the top 5, well, actually, the question was the top 3 priorities, but again, looking at those top 5, the things that came up for priorities the LCP should focus on: improving water quality, sidewalks, trails, and connectivity, housing, redevelopment of vacant and or underutilized properties, and downtown Hyannis. So, you can see some other items identified pretty frequently as well up there. We're just kind of isolating the top 5 for purposes of discussion. Participants were asked what the biggest threat was to their neighborhood. And so traffic and speeding was, the most identified. High cost of housing, pretty close. Water quality concerns. So those three things really came up a lot. And we wanted to look at kind of how that spread across the neighborhoods. So looking by village, the top threats identified by village. You can see, some terms coming up repeatedly, that high cost of housing, water quality, traffic, and speeding are the ones that came up the most kind of across villages. And then you can see some things that were kind of unique to villages, like Barnstable Village. Those vacant buildings and blighted properties came up quite a bit. And in Osterville, the seasonality. So, some difference by village, but a lot of the things that we've heard quite a bit. There were open response opportunities for some of the questions, so we just wanted to identify some of the things that did come out a lot in open responses. In terms of for wants, there were quite a bit of write-ins about ADUs, sidewalk improvements or expansion, improved pedestrian and cyclist safety also came up, and the need to protect open space. In terms of issues that came out a lot in the open responses, poor roadway maintenance, high property taxes, litter, concerns about overdevelopment, the potential for overdevelopment, the impact of septic systems on water quality, Airbnbs and seasonal rentals, and then oversized homes. So those are the things that came out that there may not have been a question option or an answer option for. So some of these things people wrote in as open responses. So that is it for the survey takeaways that we thought might kind of inform the discussion this evening.
Thank you. Are there any questions from committee? By the way, Mark joined us. Mark Hansen just joined us, so you want to officially introduce yourself? I'm sorry. It's my thing tonight.
Not a problem. Mark Hansen, my apologies for heading in. You have a young family, so
No problem.
tough to get in. Thank you.
Any surprises, questions from the committee? Nada? Avery?
Barnstable Village, it was interesting, has too many empty buildings, which I know is directly that there's a lot of properties in the village center that have been recently purchased and remain unoccupied. A lot of them are commercially zoned. But what was the one when the dilapidated buildings?
Blighted.
Blighted. I have no idea what they were talking about.
Okay.
I think maybe the fact that they're not occupied or functional at this time, they got a bad rap. Maybe they don't know what the focus is or the plans are for those buildings, so they wrote them off. Somebody was upset with it, obviously.
A lot of people are, because they're commercially viable buildings that have been empty for some of them going on 5+ years now.
Francis?
I was surprised at the people saying there wasn't enough open space, or and just generally reading through the material, the people not being aware of all the trails and open space that's available to walk in the town. I thought that was just mostly a lack of knowledge.
Could be. I'll take public comment later, so write it down so you don't forget, okay? Anybody else? No? I found it interesting, although you didn't have the slide up here about what's the one place that you would take people if you had one day for company or something like that. It was interesting to see the various things there too. So these were bigger issues than entertainment. Lindsay?
I'll just add one comment. I thought all the various meetings were very well handled, very well managed, and I thought there was great opportunities for people to interact. And I think the responses from the folks that I was with, it's pretty accurate. So good job, folks. Thanks.
Thank you for that input. All right, I guess we'll move, thank you for that. We're going to move to, Dylan is going to help us with the development of a draft vision statement.
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, so we're going to try to come up with at least the outlines of a vision statement tonight. We started that process in the 2 visioning workshops that we had at the end of February and the beginning of March. And we're going to see what we can do with those and advance it this evening. I can't promise we'll get all the way to the end, but I hope we'll make some good headway. So tonight's objectives: to review the input from the visioning meetings and to identify the key elements of the vision statement for your local comprehensive plan. I think we have a somewhat ambitious agenda. So this part of the meeting we're expecting to be about 2 hours long, with a lot of opportunity for you all to talk to each other. So first thing, we're reviewing the agenda right now. We're going to start off with a discussion of why make a vision statement. That's you all talking to each other. And telling us what you think is important about that. Then I'm going to give you a little presentation of the results of the visioning workshops, then have another group discussion reflecting on Barnstable's priorities, values, and visions, which are the main elements that came out of those meetings. That's what they were structured to develop. Then spend about 10 minutes. I gave each of you a pad and a pen. And so we're going to ask you to spend 10 minutes coming up with your own ideas for the vision. And write them down on the paper. And then I'm going to ask you to share those with each other and discuss them. And then at that point, hopefully we'll come up with some consensus of what makes sense moving forward. So I showed the same slide at a previous meeting of yours as well as the workshops, but just a general introduction to what a vision is. So it's a mental picture of what residents want their community to look like in 10 or 20 years. The idea here is to imagine the future, to describe it clearly and concisely in a way that people can understand what you're trying to say. And from that, you can sort of derive the goals and actions for the plan, so that you're making sure you're aiming toward that future idea of what you want your community to be. The Cape Cod Commission's guidance for local comprehensive plans say a vision statement expresses the shared values of the communities for future growth and development and resource protection, and represents a growth policy for the community. So if you want your plan to be in line with the Cape Cod guidance, it should do those things. All right, so in the 2 meetings we had, there was some discussion of, I kind of got the sense that people were somewhat burnt out on planning, and skeptical. Some people were skeptical of a vision in general. So just wanted to give an opportunity if anybody has those feelings, or if you have feelings that you're really excited about a vision, to sort of to share those thoughts and those feelings, so that when we move into actually trying to create a vision together, you guys have a common sense of why you're doing this. So I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, why does a comprehensive plan have a vision? And the second one is, what do you want your vision to accomplish? Does anybody want to take a crack at either of those 2 things? So why does a comprehensive plan have a vision? And what do you want your comprehensive plan to do? Cheryl?
So I think a vision is, a vision so that you can have be on the same page, be on the same track with everybody, so that we're not all off in tangents, and so that it's also more focused.
Yeah, so it's something that brings people together. It's a rallying point. Anybody else have thoughts about Francis?
I'll be your skeptic. I don't think that a visioning statement is necessary, actually. I mean, we're looking at a plan for the future of the town of Barnstable, and how it's going to function. And I think a simple statement saying that, just for, we've developed this plan and what we think is for the best interests of the town of Barnstable for the next 20 years covers it.
I love it. 2 sides of the coin. Mark?
Good evening. I think, when I look at that, I think of a vision much along the same lines as a mission statement for a company, and there are very few companies that function without one, quite honestly, that are successful. I think that in looking at a vision statement, we need to look at the things, we need to look at the situation that exists, the things that will be ongoing, and the things that we believe we can realistically change, and to put those into a picture of what we truly believe that the town can be, that the town can offer, and that we have the means to put into action.
Susan?
Yeah, I agree that it has to be, that some things that we have the means or we can obtain the means to put into action, because it's not, a vision is not a dream of what it can be. A vision is, these are things that we really feel that we can accomplish. And I think that it sets the tone for the whole thing. When people, are going to look at this, some of them aren't going to look at it very much at all. But if they read the vision and they say, okay, I'm with that, maybe they'll read a little more, or maybe they'll just say, it's okay, we're kind of on the same page. And as terms of what I would want it to accomplish would be that it would set the tone for the next 10 to 20 years as in terms of what town government is doing and the things that we want to accomplish. But also that it would tell people, and it would inform people about that. And it would be, the idea would be that there are things that we can actually accomplish and we need to move toward those, no matter how difficult they might be.
So I've heard, I think, two really important things from both Mark and Susan there. One of them is having a vision that's lofty enough that it's inspiring, I guess, but also accomplishable. It's concrete enough and within your means to pull it off. And the other thing that Susan said was that it sets the tone, right? So that setting the tone thing, I think that because you're trying to set the tone, the words then become very important, right? Because the words themselves are what set that tone. Cheryl?
Yes, just wanted to kind of marry them up together, because in a way what we're doing, I totally agree with that interpretation, but it's kind of like setting goals. It's identifying what our goals are, what were we trying to accomplish in the next 10 years or so. And you're right, so that it can then, as we were looking back to the 2010, so that whenever it comes to be revamped later, this is what we were trying to accomplish. Yeah, that is accomplishable.
Coming from the nonprofit world, a vision statement is actually what your dream is. And that's what we actually, my nonprofit, we just went through the exercise of doing that this past week. And so I don't know if it's different in this context, but it's about our shared values and what we want to see our community look like, and from our lens. But I think that this is from, I feel like it's a way to express our shared values and how we envision our community looking if we had everything we wanted. And then the goals and the plans and all of that stuff can be obviously like feeding that, but that's just my interpretation of a vision.
Carlos?
Well, my personal vision is the community sometimes, we don't serve the 100% of the community. And sometimes some people is left out, especially when you put something like that together. So my vision is whatever we accomplish here, it's going to benefit also some part of the community who's been underserved for so long and need to be served now. So.
All right. Yeah, so I thank you all for those comments. I think that they're very helpful, and it seems like you guys have a pretty good idea of what the vision is. I do hear a little bit of some things you'll have to work out together, right? Of like, how lofty do you want your vision to be? How much of a dream is it versus how much should it be narrowly focused on what you can accomplish? And then in terms of vocabulary, I think that there's a distinction between the goals and the vision. So the vision is painting a picture of the future, right? The goals are the things you're going to, they're the pieces of the vision. They're the pieces, they're the things you're going to do to get to that vision, right? They're elements that you have to accomplish in order to get to the vision, but the vision is the picture of what it is that you want your community to be like in the future. It's a subtle distinction, but you're going to have a vision in your local comprehensive plan. You're going to have goals, and then possibly objectives, and definitely actions as well. So part of that is just a matter of the phrasing, but it's also about the vision should be sort of self-explanatory. You know, you can read it and understand why it is you want to do it. And so to that end, it should encode those values within it. The values are telling you, they're speaking to people's heart and their personal priorities about why they might want to do things as a community together.
I want to make a statement. I mean, my opinion about the value. Values are really important to a vision because they kind of are the roots of that. But the ultimate outcome of all of this is going to be policy.
Yep.
At some point in time and plan. So to me, what's tonight, if we don't get to a vision, if we can settle on the values, because we have one non-believer in vision, which is good. At least we could all maybe settle on some of the values that could comprise a vision, because the most important thing eventually, you know, if you hand staff a local comprehensive plan and we say this is what we want to accomplish over the next 10, 15, 20 years, obviously that's going to set policy, or it's going to change policy, it's going to redirect policy. So that's the stuff, if people want to get into the weeds, that's important. And they all support each other.
Yeah.
But, you know, policy is like the working part of it. So it's important stuff.
Any other comments before I move on?
Think we're good?
All right, so summarizing the visioning workshop. So as I said, there were two visioning workshops or meetings held February 28th and March 1st. The one on February 28th was a virtual meeting. The one on March 1st was in person. Some of you attended those meetings, so thank you for coming. There were about 35 people at each of those meetings. Some of the people came to to both of them, so not 35 unique individuals, but 35 total. There were many areas of agreement from my perspective, looking at the notes from all the groups and seeing what people talked about. So there was agreement with the priorities that were identified in previous engagement. So your staff has done lots and lots and lots of meetings, taken notes at all of those, and then they summarized those into about 15 or so major points. And we asked people directly in the meetings whether those major points were the ones they thought were important. They were the main priorities for Barnstable moving forward. And in general, people agreed that those were. So that's great. It's telling us that there seems to be pretty good understanding in the community at large of what's important to do in the future. There was also general agreement with the previous vision. So we showed the vision from the 2010 plan and asked people, does this seem, you know, relatively okay? And people said, yeah, it does seem relatively okay. There were things that they thought needed to be added to it. And there were responses about the wording of it, the tone of it, the style of it. But generally, people seem to say that the 2010 vision was sort of in the right direction. And then for the two meetings we had, there was consistency between the groups and also between the meetings. I'm not saying that everything that was said in every group was the same, but again, there were strong themes and commonalities between those groups. So priorities we heard, and these are very similar to what were identified in all the previous engagement. So water quality, environmental protection, education, community connectedness, the character and history of villages, the need for government communication and transparency, the need for housing, transportation improvements, access to resources. This one was about basically the idea of Barnstable being sort of the Cape's downtown, and that you have access to healthcare and so forth, and that it's important to, continue that and also strengthen it in the future. The need for an economy that serves all people and provides sort of the ability to earn a living that enables you to afford to live in Barnstable. Priority on diversity and equity or equality, human services and safety, the idea of being a green community that was, referring to climate change mitigation and energy efficiency and waste management and being able to walk and bike as alternative means of transportation. And then also the need for effective decision-making at the town level. And there were various ideas about how to make effective decisions. So the ideas on the left there are the ones that seem to be, I would say, from what I heard in the groups that I was in and what I see in the notes, those are the topics that there seems to be more cohesion around. And the ones on the right are the ones that I saw there was people largely agree that they are important, but maybe there are differing opinions about how important they are or how to move forward on them. So there are those topics like housing, the economy, human services, and so forth, were the ones where there were more differences of opinion overall. This is a list of values that we saw in the results of the meeting. Some of these are things that people said directly, and some of them are things that I've extrapolated from the notes. So health, that's an example of something people said was important directly, public health, specifically with a need for clean water. The idea of cleanliness, keeping your environment clean, keeping your streets clean, so forth. The idea of stewardship and sustainability, balance, so that could be balancing the built environment with a natural environment, or balancing expenses with tax revenue. Opportunities for everyone, the American dream. This is one that wasn't said specifically, but it came up a lot in the idea of children who grew up in Barnstable being able to afford to buy a house in Barnstable, or future generations having a life that is as good as the past generations had. The value of community, the value of diversity and equity and equality, joy. So in the second meeting, we had ideas written on stickies, and then we put them up on boards and had people put dots on the ideas that they thought were the most powerful. And so one of the ideas for the vision, a big idea for the vision, was a joyful community. And that got the most dots out of anything. So the idea of, I think, of being happy people and together was powerful to people in that second meeting. Caring for others, respecting elders, fairness, sense of place and uniqueness, connection to history and continuity, identity. So this is about, in part about the villages. So the villages, there's a lot of talk about preserving villages, right? But I think there was also a lot of identification with villages, that like, I am from this village, these are my people, right? So it's not just about the physical characteristic of the villages, but the villages are an identity in themselves. Being a small town, not a big city, being a real community, a priority on fixing what's broken, convenience and access, safety and security, taking responsibility, democracy, inclusion, and collaboration. So that's a big, long list of values. Felicia, they're a starting point for a future discussion. And then you'll see in one of the handouts that you have that we tried to link. So in the visioning workshops we did, we had people talk about their priorities. We had them talk about their values. and we had them talk about vision ideas. So then we took those and we tried to link them together. So these are just a couple of examples that are in your handout. For the most part, these are words that come from either the previous engagement or from these workshops. So they're somewhat direct quotes. So protect the environment, preserve open space, improve climate resilience, and plant trees. So those are all priorities related to the environment in one way or the other. And so vision ideas that came out of the workshops from that. Barnstable is healing our environment. Sustainability is our touchstone. We're building resilience in the face of climate change and sea level rise. And some values that underlie those are stewardship, sustainability, balance, cleanliness. We're part of the environment, not separate from it. Or the priority of expanding housing. So expand housing options and opportunities at affordable prices for all ages. And some vision ideas related to that. There's appropriate affordable housing in the different villages. Housing is balanced with other needs like protecting water quality and limiting traffic. Or there's housing for all. And some values underlying those is opportunities for everyone, care for others, the American dream, respect for elders, being a real community, and fairness. So the goal tonight is, I think that from the past work, you have a pretty good handle, or we have a pretty good handle, on your priorities. But I think we need to really figure out what those values are, like Felicia said, and then what the vision is that goes along with those priorities. So what the ideal and accomplishable future state is for your priorities. There were some differing opinions in those meetings. So I've put them in a couple different buckets. So what's the right balance? So what's the right balance of humans and the environment? What's the right balance of preservation and change? What's the right balance of individual responsibility and community responsibility? What's the town responsible for? I think was there, fundamental differing opinions about that. That's pretty basic to our two-party system, right?
It's like the $50 million question, isn't it?
Yeah. And then whose needs are most important? So which groups in our town are we going to prioritize when we make decisions? Which priorities are most important? So there's a lot that people want to do. How do you decide which one to act on, where to put the town's resources? And then differences about implementation approaches. So do you change regulations, or do you put funding towards things, or is it a public-private partnership? So for various different topics, there are different ideas about implementation. So there was one really interesting conversation in the first group that I was in about caring for others and dealing with, helping people with mental health issues and addiction issues. And the group as a whole seemed to think this was important, but they had very different opinions about how to solve that problem. So that was one example. And then on those stickies there, I don't know if they're somewhat difficult to read, especially on that screen with the light coming in. But you can see that there are a couple different stickies here that all relate to housing. So affordable, attainable housing got 2 dots. Different types of housing for different needs got 5 dots. Sustainable housing for locals and year-round and all ages got 6 dots. And then the idea of water quality, housing versus environment also got 5 dots. So I have those up there because I think it's important to think about how different wording speaks to different people, right? So affordable housing speaks really clearly and powerfully for some people. In this group, it didn't speak as loudly as different types of housing for different types, for different needs, right, which is more general. Or the use of the word local and year-round got more traction. Okay. So on the approach to the vision, I mentioned earlier that people generally thought the 2010 vision was okay. There was a lot of response to it, though, saying that it was kind of too weak. Somebody used the word vanilla. So these are quotes from our notes. The 2010 vision was playing it safe. This vision should be so clear that it basically frames decisions clearly. So the idea of we can't do something unless it touches these values. Or another one, we need to drive to where the vision is, not just a laundry list, but need to combine ideas into a coherent vision. So those are some aspirations from meeting participants to aim toward today. All right. So I wanted to stop there and see if you guys have any responses to that summary, to the sort of priorities and values and vision that were in your the meeting summary that you all got ahead of time. Or just if you want to start talking about what you think the priorities and the values and the vision should be for this upcoming local comprehensive plan.
I noticed that two members of this committee actually had written a vision. Did you get copies of that?
Yeah, and we'll get to
Okay.
those later.
All right, fine. I didn't know if you wanted to dissect and see how it plugged into this, but I guess you'll do it.
Yeah,
You'll let us do it first, and then you'll.
Yeah, what I was
do the
thinking
same
is
thing.
that in the time where I have you guys write, we'll use those as examples as well.
Okay. Mark?
Thank you. Just a couple of, just in seeing the information, a couple of thoughts and just a couple of things that I jotted down. You know, one of the things that as we create a vision, I think is going to be important, and if I could jump on what Felicia had said just a little bit ago, is that eventually it does come down to policy. And I think that as we create a vision or a vision is created, I think we should look at, you know, the people that will be creating that policy, that we look to see that they share those values, that they share those visions. There's nothing more detrimental to a vision than somebody that is anti that, you know, that vision. And whether that is, you know, anti-development or whatever it happens to be, and I'm not saying carte blanche, but certainly you at least have to, while they're being vetted, I think it's important to take a look at those things. I think language is important. You know, when we talk about housing, let's say, and we talk about affordable, truthfully, affordable is, by real numbers in Barnstable, is already higher than most working families can actually afford because of just the demographic and the way those numbers fall down. Maybe what we should do is be very aware of language and use things more like accessible, and because looking specifically at where we are. Balance, I think that comes, you know, the vision should define that somewhat in some of the things that you were looking at. And, you know, when we look at the things that seem to be a priority, it's not surprising necessarily that we get the things we look at. When we were looking at the dots, you know, the affordable housing, let's say, had 2. My guess is that the people attending the workshops maybe had a little more time, or that the people that may have responded differently were at work. So, you know, we are, as a general group, a little bit older. We're making decisions for people who are younger families, people that will be servicing an older demographic within 10 years and looking into the future. So, and again, it comes down to needs versus wants. We know, and many people know, what the needs are, and you know, it's finding that balance between needs and wants. So, thank you.
Well, one thing that you made me just think of was that the people who did the dots had the value of being in a group discussion and hearing other people's opinions, as opposed to the people who did the survey. They were just thinking what they thought for themselves. So if the words affordable housing, you know, strike terror in their heart, then they didn't have the the discussion that maybe brought in some other ways of looking at that. Two things that I found really interesting in all of this, information that came forward were, first of all, the fact that people really are down on town government. And I don't know whether that's because people are down on town government in general. I feel like our town makes an effort to connect with people. And obviously, it's not happening. So I think we need to look really hard at that. And then the other thing that really surprised me was the emphasis on connection.
Pull your mic up.
Oh, sorry. The other thing that really surprised me was the emphasis on connection. And I sometimes wonder if that has to do with COVID and also with sort of the national trend of, not being connected to other people in your community necessarily. But I think we really have to honor that and think of how that might be accomplished in some way.
Any other comments? No, I thought on the sticky dot thing on the housing board that you had up there, the fact that I think it was year-round, not seasonal housing got the most dots. And sustainable housing, meaning, I don't think that meant green, I think that meant paycheck sustainable, meaning, you can afford it. So that's my definition of affordable housing is paycheck sustainable. Doesn't matter what your paycheck is. It could be very low, it could be very high, but as long as you can sustain it, that's what it's affordable to you. So words are key and very important because they do mean different things to different people, but we need to, I'm sure that's one of the things that you will help guide us to keep our words well chosen or well represented.
All right.
There you go.
Yeah. So let's come up with some of those words now, I think. And I think we should start with words for values. You don't have to write them down now. Peter will do the writing for you. So what are some words that represent the values that you all think are important? I can put up my list again if you'd like, or you can come up with your own.
Can we strike joy off that list? It drives me crazy.
Yeah,
I put my dot on the joy, okay? I put my dot on the joy.
not.
I did. And I will tell you why. She put all her dots on the joy. I felt like it lent a little levity, obviously, to like something that was so serious. It was also like kind of a long meaning. But and but I feel like we do want to be a joyful community. We want to be, and I feel like that breeds connection as well when people are feeling joyful and happy. It does feel a little intangible and inexplainable, but
Well, it's an emotion. It's not a value.
so what
Just
is
saying.
so what's the
That's
value?
not a bad thing. It's
Right.
the result of
Okay,
a value.
so what's the value that would spark joy?
Francis says.
I think we're going to have to leave joy on there.
Francis?
I would put safety, community safety. I think people are very concerned about being safe in their homes and being safe.
Yeah,
You
that's
know.
up there. Okay. Carlos?
I just want to put inclusion on that, so.
Okay.
Let's go back to this joyful community thing though,
Thank you.
because there is
Who
something
knew?
there, right? So you could call that like other terms people use for that are like quality of life, but there's something about a life worth living, right? So what's the value for a life worth living?
And I think communities can create spaces and environments that do bring joy to their community members, and that increases our connection to the community and our desire to invest in the community, whether that's our time or our intention or dollars or any of that stuff. So if you live in a place that's depressing, you don't want to give back to it with blight, like Barnstable Village. You don't want to, you don't engage, I think.
I think Amanda's made her point.
But we still haven't figured out the value.
All right, that's going to be your job, Amanda.
Right.
I think
Francis,
Felicia-
wait a
oh,
minute.
sorry.
But that's all well and good, but is that what the government is supposed to be doing? We're talking about the government of the town of Barnstable.
Well, why shouldn't the government foster activating spaces to, like, for community groups to have events that bring joy? I do feel like the town has a role in that, for sure.
So does the Open Space and Recreation Committee.
Which is a committee in the town.
No, it's realistic, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's their job.
I think Felicia had a good point, also affordable. You were talking about words, affordable
Oh,
should be on.
paycheck sustainable. yeah.
Paycheck sustainable.
Lindsay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think this issue of safety is actually very important. When you talk to the environment, people want to know that, when they're out in the environment or they go to the beach, that it's safe, hasn't got bacteria and broken glass. Same thing's true when they turn on their tap water. They don't want to have to be worrying about reading some study it's going on because it's not safe. And then you come to traffic and speeding. Speeding is a big issue. Police will tell you all the time, number one, 40% of their issues is speeding. Whether you're in traffic or trying to ride a bicycle in traffic or get to a trail so you can walk safely. And really, I think the government piece of that is to improve each one of these as we go forward with every decision we make. You want to improve the environment, well, we've got to make some hard decisions in the future over where we're going to be able to build and not build as the sewer expands. What's a buildable lot, today might not be maybe a different thing. And then when you come to safety of community housing, for example, then what that's about. People need to know that their landlord isn't going to raise the rent 25% and they're done, see you later. Or to our seasonal people who come in and, want to stay, they land a great job, but they just can't find a place to stay no matter what the price. So there is a big safety issue out there. And government has a huge role in each piece of that to take it on, whether it's fixing a traffic circle or protecting some land for drinking water, so.
So does that include security also, do you think? Safety and security, they kind of go together?
I think security is in many cases the backup piece that the government provides, whether it's police, fire, the hospital system, the community support system in our neighborhood, the services we provide. Hyannis is outstanding for that kind of thing. So we've done very well in certain areas. Getting a roof over some people's heads, tough to do.
I think the sense of security is what comes from feeling that the safety is in the community. It's a result of the safety issue.
So there's infrastructure safety issues
Yeah.
and environmental safety issues, but are there personal safety issues we need to define here so we know exactly what the word safety refers to?
I want to say cultural competent. I don't think that our government today don't know our community well. I think they should listen to people more often, and then they can understand what they want.
So your first words were cultural competence, is that what you said? Yep. Cultural competence. That was for Peter's benefit.
Yeah.
Competence. Yep.
So I hear a value for some values that I hear in cultural competence is there's a respect for other people. Like you respect them enough to be able to make the effort to be able to understand what they're saying and to hear what they're saying and to connect with them.
Well, what I meant was I meant more for the local officials who's been elected. And I think they lost the connection with the community. And that's what I mean about culture competent. They should be out there talking to people, not sitting down here sometimes, not listening to people what they have to say, and give us only 3 minutes to talk.
Carlos, can I just ask you to clarify? I think what you're saying is not just a specific culture. You're talking about the overall culture of the community.
I'm not talking about immigrant community, no.
No. No, but that gets back to the question that I think Susan said about local government. There was a lot of stuff in the survey that was critical of municipal government, correct?
Yes.
So
yeah.
that's basically part of that umbrella, okay. But you're bringing it down to those who are elected people who represent the citizens. You're saying there's not good communication between them and the people they represent. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying, they lost the connection. They need
Yeah.
to regain that connection.
Okay. Just making sure I am.
I think there's so much here that is tied into this idea of connectedness. You know, you're saying the government should be better connected to the people. And then were you just talking about safety? Lindsay, I think, was just talking about safety. Well, the idea of being connected to your local community, that makes people feel safer if they think that I just was talking with a friend today whose husband has dementia, and she was like, the people next door to us that we knew, that we liked, just moved away, and there's nobody else in my neighborhood that I know, and makes me feel unsafe. There's not somebody that I can go to for help. My one that I really hit on there, because this is something I've thought about a lot for a long time, was real community. You know, I think that we have that opportunity, and I think a lot of people live in Barnstable because they want to be part of a real community where there are all different sorts of people, where there's inclusion and there's diversity and there's people take responsibility, and the villages have an identity, and that sense of place, that idea of connection to history, caring for others, all those kinds of things, to me, go into a real community, and not a community where everyone is a summer person, and a community where there's only one type of housing, or only one, what do I want to say, only expensive real estate, and there's not housing for other people who live here year-round and are important to the community.
Susan, I agree with you, but how would this commission address that?
I'm just thinking that right now.
How would you address what?
The real community.
I agree with that, and I like your definition of real community, a sense of inclusion, a sense of responsibility, the idea of connection. I think that's huge, but I think I love that, but I question how would this particular committee foster that?
Well, I heard a lot of things in what she said that are related to a comprehensive plan, especially the idea of not just one type of housing, you know, or an economy that serves all of your people. So if you have an economic development strategy as a town, you want it to be, if your intention is that your economy serves everybody, then your economic development strategy should be in line with that, right?
Francis?
I was just going to say, when growing up on the Cape and Katuitt, we had people who came for the summer and stayed for the summer and became involved in the community of the village of Katuitt. And that has greatly changed. We have summer people now who come but aren't terribly active in community events or affairs, or they've just kind of come and stay to themselves. And I think that's been a big change in the way the village operates, and I suspect that might be the same in other villages also.
Francis, is there a value that you want to express about that?
I just think it's unfortunate, you know, that they're less involved in what goes on in the village. You know, I think they're missing a great deal if they just come down and stay at their house and, you know, go for a swim or a sail or something and don't actually mingle with us who live there all year round.
I don't know. Did you have something you want to say? You look like you wanted to say
I
something.
do, but I think I'm going to have a hard time, like the rest of the board, kind of assigning a value to it necessarily. But I think one of the things that's important here is that we have to understand the demographics. It's all well and good to put, some vision in place, but the reality is that Cape Cod and Barnstable in particular has an older demographic, and it will for some time. At this point, you're not going to stop. This is a high concentration of wealth area. It just is. You're not going to stop people from coming here and purchasing and building. They're coming from all sorts of areas around the country. They have a lot of money. And so you'll start to see more and more of you're either serving or you're being served. If we're hoping to include attracting a younger population so that we have some sort of middle ground there, then that also has to be built into this vision. But I think to swim against the tide too much, again, aging population, who is servicing those people? Where are they living? Are they coming from off Cape? Are they going to be living on Cape? I mean, certain things just that are a reality, I wouldn't want us to ignore necessarily. But certainly there will be a dwindling middle class here, and that is a reality of the situation. I would bet that if I were to ask people in this room to put up their hand if they own a home already, it's probably a high majority. I'm not asking people to do it, but, there's probably very few people, that are not in that position in this room. So again, I think understanding the demographics and what that means for the next 10 years, and then beyond that, if we're looking for that to change, I mean, obviously, if we continue on our path, the demographic will be similar. But if we're hoping to include, attract a younger population, I think that needs to be part of the conversation. Again, not sure how you put that to a value necessarily, but I think it should be a consideration.
If you want to put that to a value, you have to decide first whether you care or not.
And again, it depends who you're asking, right? I mean,
Right.
if people are content in their life, they don't necessarily need a younger population. They only need a working population to serve. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It just is what it is. Very much like Nantucket has become, let's say, that is creeping. And that's a reality of where we are right now. So whether we want to be a Nantucket or whether we want to be a Barnstable, that's something different. I'm not even saying Nantucket's bad, but that is the reality of what is moving this direction. And I think to ignore that is foolish. And I think it just it would help us to really decide, what do we want to be in that sense.
I could tell you I don't want to be in Nantucket. I live next to the ferries. I definitely don't want to be in Nantucket. Piggybacking on what he's saying, balancing our economy is really important to me, diversifying the economy, because if you're talking about young people, younger people, let's just say that. I don't know what the definition of young is anymore. So,
Perhaps having family age.
yeah, our school system needs younger people, so I mean, it would be nice to maintain that here. But with technology the way it is today, the more we build our infrastructure, technological infrastructure, we need to foster entrepreneurship. We need to foster knowledge-based work, let's just put it that way. It needs to balance the tourism and hospitality sector in retail, service sector. We need to do that in a big way. I mean, who wouldn't want to live here with the recreational opportunities that we have? Just the environment is so beautiful, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a very attractive place to be, and obviously the town's been working very hard to make it more attractive and to accommodate more people as far as more bicycles, more pedestrian friendly, more open space and green space and recreation, et cetera, calm traffic down a little bit, et cetera, and support our local businesses. But we do need to balance that out, and I don't think we've ever been very good at doing that. Language sounds great. Language appears in all our plans and has for the last 20 years. It's appeared in the Cape Cod Commission plan since they started. They used to have an economic development director over there, and they don't anymore. And that's very sad to me, because it doesn't take much to put the elements together to encourage knowledge-based work in your community, and to make that thrive. And I think that's really, really important to do. Nothing deals with the economy up there, not much. Not surprising, because I think everybody just assumes it's more tourism, more hospitality all the time, and it's too bad.
And if I could just very quickly piggyback on that as well, I think one of the things that we can do as a government, again, to speak, is to have boards, commissions, again, people that are very pro our vision. Again, a lot of people don't know this because maybe they're not in the industry, but one of the funny things that always comes up, and I'm not saying this is good or bad, but it is that when there are real estate listings out there, specifically commercial, one of the things that is written very frequently is exempt from the Cape Cod Commission. Why is that? And if that is a pro, that's a problem, right? And whether it's just an understood, that is the perception, the reality is it gets put out there. And I think if we can start to work, again, from a governmental perspective, to know that, we are all working towards a common vision, that I think will be very helpful.
I was just going to say that I think when I think of diversity, I don't just think of cultural diversity, but I think of diversity in demographics too. And I think we can kind of express what Mark was talking about having all different ages and different groups. I think of it as diversity of thought, diversity of experiences. So to me, that diversity value sort of can be extrapolated to include all of those other elements as well.
There are other values we're missing here. You got a big list up there.
One thing I haven't heard much from you all is the environmental values, right? So water quality was at the top of the list from many people in those meetings. Protecting the environment was at the top of the list. So Lindsay talked about the safety aspect of that before, safe water quality, or safe water that you can drink and that you can swim in. But I suspect there are other values that drive people to think that protecting the environment is important.
Yeah, I think maintaining our habitats for wildlife is exceptionally important for this area, because interestingly enough, I always remember this, back in '94, I had the privilege to go to mainland China on a tour, and that's another story by itself, but we were in Beijing, and people noticed there were hundreds, maybe thousands of locust trees. And I think if anybody knows anything about trees, locust trees are the fastest growing trees that there are. And so somebody asked the tour guide the question about why so many locust trees. Don't think of China having locust trees. And they said that back, I wasn't sure what year it was, somebody decided to get rid of the birds. Some birds, they thought there were too many birds or something. So they eliminated the birds. And they cut down a whole bunch of trees to get rid of the birds, besides other stuff that they did to the birds. And no, they didn't cut the trees down, I'm sorry. They got rid of the birds, and the insects took over. So the insects killed the trees, okay? So they had to cut down the trees, and then the people got upset because they didn't have any trees anymore, so they planted locust trees. And by the time we got there, the locust trees were probably 15, 20 years old by then. And so that's the story of locust trees. And I always remember that cycle where sometimes people don't think about the long term of what that was. So, I mean, I'm definitely a wildlife preservation person. I think that, humans encroach too much on the environment, because without it, we're dead. It changes the air, changes the temperature, changes everything. I just thought it was assumed here that we would protect our environment. I don't know how many people feel that way or not on the committee, but
Yeah, so Felicia, I think you just did a really great job of like getting to different values, right? So there's protecting the environment. That's kind of the priority, right? And then there are values under that. So she's a wildlife person, right? She's got some like, it's important to her that wildlife exists in her environment. That's just it's a bedrock principle. It's a value. But then there's this other value of we need that natural system to be going because it is important for our own life. It's important for human health and existence. We need clean air that the trees are breathing out. We need to not be overrun with insects that might carry diseases that will get us sick, right? So you touched on two different values.
little
that are under-
ecosystem all by itself.
yeah, that are underneath that idea of protecting the environment. And so if we can all go to that level, then your vision has more power, right? Because people can say protect the environment but mean different things, or they can say preserve our community character, but they're doing that for different reasons, right? They may be preserving community character
Very
because
generic.
it's important for they feel like the community character is what is generating their property value, and they plan on selling their property at some point, so it's a financial investment for them. For other people, preserving community character might be because they care a whole lot about history, and they think it's really important that we have sort of a continuity of connection with our past. For somebody else, it might be about aesthetics. They value just the way things look. It's important that it looks the same way. For other people, it might be a security thing of change freaks me out. And so I want continuity in the way things look because I don't want any change. That's scary to me.
I think also maybe when we're putting together the vision, especially when we're talking about environment, I think it might be worth sticking to more high-level visions of that. For some reason, I don't know, in my own family, when we have dinner conversations, when the families get together, it's much like religion. It's one of those funny topics that tends to be polarizing if you get too specific about it. People have different views. But I think everybody that lives on Cape Cod can certainly agree upon some of the high-level things of water quality and what they would like to see this area look like and things like that. But I think, with regard to the vision, might be worth sort of keeping it high level in that circumstance. I just find it's one of those topics that can get pretty heated pretty fast.
All right. I'm going to move on because we're.
He took your hint.
I don't
Susan.
necessarily think that we should shy away from the environment because it's because to me, it's almost like a given, okay? And everybody, it's a given. You want to protect the environment. Now, what that means it means different things to different people, but I think we need to sort of pull that out a little bit. And this is not really a value, but all the things that we've just been talking about and why people want to, preserve community character and all that sort of thing, they're all connected to economic values. We want to, all of the things that people like about our town means that people want to come and visit our town. And that has a lot to do with the economy.
Like you and Felicia, I thought it was pretty much a given, as you had said.
Yeah, the environment is our economy.
That is our
That
economy,
is the
Yeah.
word.
So both of those are
There's an
tied
obvious,
together.
yeah.
They're giving me the time signal,
Yeah.
so it's time to move on.
The
All right.
peanut gallery.
Okay, so here, I just wanted to review some examples of vision statements. So we looked at these last time. So Cambridge is a forward-thinking, welcoming, and diverse city. We enjoy high quality of life and thrive in a sustainable, inclusive, and connected community. I think you have a handout that has the full vision statement for Cambridge, which goes on for a couple of pages about values, right? So it has a very simple statement of the vision. It's one sentence, but then there are a whole lot of values that give some teeth to that or give some weight to that. So that's one way of constructing a vision. This one for Greensboro, a lot of you on this committee liked this last time you saw it, and I think it somewhat inspired Avery and Wendy's visions that they submitted. Is that right, Avery? Yeah. Okay, so in 2040, Greensboro will be the best mid-sized city in America. And then they detailed that a little bit. So Greensboro is an ambitious city that achieves it and is known for great things. Our community is livable and active, friendly, warm, and welcoming with all the amenities of a large city. There are a lot of adjectives in that, right? So friendly, warm, welcoming, livable, active, ambitious. So one of the things visions often do is they load on the adjectives because those adjectives speak to people's values. The greenest city in the South. Greensboro is green in all ways. We have a resilient tree canopy, a vibrant park system, and we take care of our environment. I'm going to move on from there. Okay, so this is Brewster's vision. I'm just going to read the second paragraph here. So we preserve our historical setting and seek to protect its contributions to our town's character. We work to preserve the rural small-town feel of Brewster created by low-density development and open space, which contributes to protecting water resources and providing scenic areas for recreation and contemplation. In the context of coastal change, we protect our bayside coastline, which defines our sense of place and provides special recreational and economic opportunities. So what they're doing here is telling you both what they're doing and also why they're doing it, right? So we work to preserve the rural small-town feel of Brewster, which contributes to protecting water resources and providing scenic areas for recreation and contemplation. So there's an explanation built into, or a justification built into the vision. It's not just what they're doing, but it's also why. So that's another way of setting this thing up. This one is from Bridgewater. So I'm going to read the second paragraph again. Sound fiscal management and careful consideration of local and regional needs will allow Bridgewater to offer excellent schools, reliable municipal services, sustainable infrastructure, and a breadth of housing options. The town will plan for resilience to climate change and reduce its overall environmental impact by using renewable energy sources, sustainable development practices, and innovative transportation solutions. Bridgewater's commitment to open space access and natural resources conservation will enable residents and visitors to treasure the town's many scenic landscapes. So this one is telling you, again, what they're going to do. What is this one doing? Yeah, this one's telling you, I think this one is sort of like vision and priorities, right?
List of priorities.
Yeah. So the previous one was kind of vision and then sort of values, why we're doing this. This one is a list of primarily priorities with some vision. And it's much more specific. So the town will partner with Bridgewater State University to promote economic, intellectual, and recreational engagement, blah, blah, blah. So it's like really specific about what this town is going to do and why it's going to do it. It's not so heavy on the values. And then the 2010 vision, which I'm sure you all are familiar with, which is the 7 diverse yet interconnected villages of Barnstable form one community that's an integral part of Cape Cod. As the town in 2010 has been shaped by its past, through this plan, Barnstable will shape a sustainable future. The town will preserve its history, environment, and community for future generations through active stewardship of community character and quality of life, while balancing growth, infrastructure, and natural systems. So it has this idea of balance, continuity with the past, sustainability, and it's, as Mark was saying, it's pretty high level, right? It's designed to be something that almost anybody could get behind.
Yeah, but it did also on the same page have a list of 13 comprehensive goals.
Yeah.
Which I assume was their version of values at the time. Even though they're more specific than a value.
Yeah, those were sort of what I would call their priorities or the goals, the things that were going to be accomplished. Yep. All right. So I'd like you guys to spend just 10 minutes writing up some ideas for your vision. So if you could come up with, say, 5 sentences, our vision for Barnstable is, in 5 sentences. Try to keep it in that sort of vision language, which is, it's either present tense or future tense. It's either we are or we will be, right? And you're describing the end state. You're describing what you want Barnstable to be in the future. And then also try to come up with some values that your vision is reflecting.
Take the whole packet. They're all packets, just don't pull a sheet off the top. Take the whole entire. That's fine, just, it's gonna be missing it. Take the whole thing. Yeah, you can't just take one sheet off of it, just take all of the material. I have notes.
This is harder than I thought.
Yeah, it is.
This is harder than I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, I'm
It's
leaving.
not coming out. Doesn't, when you write, you think it.
Yeah,
They
you know
haven't
what you're
flown like some of
thinking, but
these.
I'm not going to worry about that. I
Some of
figure,
these,
yeah, I figure I don't have to have the perfect words.
mine don't make any sense.
Oh, well, I think mine makes sense, but not completely. And I'm sure I left things out.
Well, yeah, because I jumped around.
Yeah.
You know, I got housing, I got
Well, I
environment.
didn't even put housing in there. Shit. Excuse me.
Housing, I'm telling you, the meetings I went to, they didn't see
No, I know. I'm wondering if that's a thing that, one of those that's now a given.
If we're not inspirational enough,
I'm not sure.
if not now, when? If not us, who? I'm gonna say yes, please. Put my mic up. Gotta defend the joy. I'm defending the joy. I will.
So we'll have just one more minute.
Are you guys getting close, or 2 minutes? You're all right? You're good? All right. They say they're good.
All right. Do you need more time, Francis? Do you want more time? No? All right.
She can't have more time. She doesn't even want a vision statement.
Well, but now that she's invested,
Just kidding.
all right. So what we're going to do now is you're all going to read your vision statements to each other. And I'm going to read Wendy's since she's not here tonight. Wendy submitted one ahead of time. So, and you all have this in your handouts. So Wendy's statement was, our vision is to support the prosperity and potential of every person in every village in the town of Barnstable. To assure this, we will honor and heal the natural environment, especially our waters, create housing to support our working people, help our children stay connected to their Barnstable heritage, and provide equitable homes for all generations. Provide access to world-class education, outstanding recreation, every mode of transportation, and transparent town government. Encourage living wage employment, celebrate human achievement, and raise up those who need assistance to live, work, play, or create in Barnstable. Strengthen the health, safety, and enjoyment of every person in Barnstable. Enable processes that will activate our vision for Barnstable's quality of life. So as you all are reading this, everybody else, take notes on the things that you like, that resonate with you, the commonalities, the values you hear, and so forth, so we can talk about it afterwards. Since Avery, since you did your homework, do you want to go next?
So, so I had actually, prior to realizing we were doing a vision statement, I had really been thinking more about a mission statement. And I kind of distilled it down to that there are two entities. There are the people who live in the town, and there's the environment. And that it's the town's job to make a balance between them. So, all right, truth be told, I wanted to work on the vision statement, and I was procrastinating, and in my inbox came an email that said, do you want to try Google's AI system, Bard? Who wouldn't now? No, it was cool. It's totally cool, because I took my mission, I put in vision statement, and it came up with something ridiculous. But then I put in town planning with residents and environment as the stakeholders. And it basically spit out what you see here on the top. And I did a
That's
little.
why I'm going to be out of work in like 3 months.
I know.
It's
Exactly.
and I changed a few words and everything, but that was the main vision statement. I've been to so many meetings because I've been listening to everything, and now I know about the blight. But one of the things that I heard that I thought was such an important one is that the town needs to be proactive and not reactive. And so that's why I decided it's not we, it's the town. And it's a little bit, these are the employees of the town. Anyway, we'll be proactive. And then you can all read what I wrote. I don't have to read that. That would be a little redundant. But I just thought of all the different things that I had heard, and I tried to kind of put it into some form of language that started to hit upon a lot of the things that I've heard from everybody. So that's my vision statement. Thank you, Bard AI.
Which parts are written by Bard and which are written by you, or is it all Bard?
Just the bold. The
Just the
bold
bold
part
part.
was, well, it was partly written by AI. I
Who wrote the third bullet down?
Avery did.
Thank you. Avery did the bullets, and
Yeah,
Okay.
I did all the bullets. I did all of it,
All right.
actually. It's just that Bard wrote a sentence for me, and I was like, wow, that's kind of cool.
It's nice to know the human brain is still appreciated.
oh yeah. So
Okay, here we
read
go.
it for the public.
Hello, public. The town of Barnstable will proactively.
Well, read your first
Oh,
paragraph.
sorry. Hi, public.
The AI wrote the paragraph, and then she
Bard
wrote
wrote,
bullets.
Barnstable is a vibrant and diverse community where people and nature thrive together. We're committed to creating a healthy, safe, and equitable environment for all residents and to protecting our natural resources for future generations. Then in smaller letters, the town of Barnstable will proactively, a bunch of bullets, here we go. Design and build infrastructure that is resilient and adaptable. Utilize renewable energy and ecologically friendly practices in its built systems. Encourage redevelopment over new development. Support, and I added tonight, diverse economic growth that is not destructive to the environment and does not exhaust natural resources nor monopolize an industry. The next bullet, attract businesses that provide living wages and growth opportunities to their employees. Next bullet, incentivize development that provides significant and truly affordable housing. We've got a lot of new words in there from tonight. Ensure accountability of healthcare, and I added social services and social services so that they meet the needs of all residents. Build systems that provide safe and reliable transportation for all residents. Safeguard and enhance affordable and job-based educational resources. Encourage participation in and use of recreational opportunities and open space. Respect and honor the character and history of its 7 villages, economy, and the people in the face of imminent change. Facilitate communication between town and residents, village to village, and neighbor to neighbor.
We're done. No, I'm kidding.
Not quite. All
Just
right,
kidding.
So who wants to go next? Mark wants to go next?
If you don't mind. Not AI, but off the cuff a little bit. So, one, to encourage cohesive structural design that plays to the history and character of the individual villages. Two, to create village centers that offer safety, convenience for its residents, and an enhanced experience for its visitors. Three, to preserve maximum access to waterways and beaches while weighing environmental considerations. Number four, support local and upstart industry by way of grants, low-cost loans, and priority to local residents. Number five, identify perpetual funding opportunities through transfer taxes or like-type vehicles to subsidize the creation of accessible housing. Number six, continue to improve infrastructure and communications to assist in expansion and future development.
I'll go next. I wish I had the benefit of the AI, though. Okay, so our vision, or mission, if you like, I like that too, for the future of the 7 villages of Barnstable will support the core values intrinsic to our growing community, which will protect and promote our rich history and unique Cape Cod character, natural environment, physical and human infrastructures, for future Barnstable residents, promoting community and connections that embrace our valuable cultural diversity for the future generations to enjoy, and on which they can further build to sustain our shared values and community at large for an ongoing, healthy, prosperous, and connected community. AI would have made it a little better. But.
Want to go?
I'm actually one who kind of likes the 2010 vision statement for its simplicity and its inclusiveness. And I'm going to fairly blatantly and shamelessly plagiarize some of its language. But before I do that, I want to comment that, as we've gone around town, we've all noticed the things that the people in the villages have told us and tried to incorporate those things. And, amongst the things that I found, that I'm sure we've all found, is that there are people, not everyone, but there are some people in the various villages who view themselves as residents of the village, but not of the town of Barnstable. And I think it's important that when we do a vision, we try to balance those off and recognize that each of the 7 villages have a unique history and culture and character, but at the same time, they're all part of the town of Barnstable, and they all have to kind of work together. I don't dislike anything that was on any of the samples that you showed from the various cities. The one from Greensboro, I agree with everything they say. It's a nice thing to say. I think it's incredibly more detailed than a vision statement for a comprehensive plan should be. So I'm in favor, generally speaking, of something that we can fit in 1 paragraph instead of in 2 pages as a practical matter. So having said that, I'll begin by plagiarizing shamelessly. The 7 diverse yet interconnected villages form one community that is an integral part of Cape Cod. The town will preserve its history, environment, and community for future generations through active stewardship of community character and quality of life, while balancing growth, infrastructure, and natural systems. Barnstable encourages a diversity of age, culture, education, and economics to create a sense of place where all members of our community, providing a whole range of services, will have housing which they can afford, with both freshwater and ocean assets sustainable for the indefinite future, and inclusiveness in which all members of our community feel both welcome and safe.
Nice job. I know. Nice job.
So, Robert, what I think I saw you do there is you took a lot of what was in the 2010 vision, and then you added those things that have been coming up in this process, which is more about the people, right?
I think it's important that when we form a vision statement for this plan, that we have in mind what we think Barnstable will look like 30 years from now, and what we need to do to make it look the way we want it to look 30 years from now, as opposed to what it will look like.
You need to turn your mic on, hon. Thank you.
As opposed to what it will look like if we don't do those things. Turn it off. I'll
Can you
put the
say
whole
that
thing back
again?
out. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I think it's important when we do the vision statement, it's important to keep in mind what we want the town of Barnstable to look like 30 years from now, what we expect it to look like, and to be able to formulate a plan to accomplish the things to make it look the way we want instead of the way it will look if we don't engage in those activities.
So what are some examples of from your vision statement of the way you want it to look?
Well, we know, for instance, the town of Barnstable is going to grow in population. It has to, because we can't service our businesses, we can't service our schools, we can't buy food in the grocery stores because there aren't people to stock the shelves. We can't get products in here. So we have to have people who are going to come in. Our town is going to grow. We have to have places to put those people. They don't all make $1 million a year. We have to have a diversity of housing where people who make $40,000 a year can live, people who make $80,000 a year can live, people with no children have a place they can live, people with 6 children can have a place to live. We have to incorporate all that into one unified set of objectives to create the things we're going to need in the short term, which I say is 30 years, so that we'll have people who can work in the stores, who can teach in the schools, who can work in the city to accomplish the things we have to accomplish as a town. And we're no longer a small town. You know, we're a pretty big town. It's a practical matter.
Thanks. I think your description of a vision is right on. I mean, I think that idea of like, what do you want it to be in the future? And with an idea that flows from that for the rest of the plan of how are you going to get there?
I really like that idea, too, about what you want it to be in the future and to make sure that you're going to do the things that you need to do to get there and not leave it to chance, because if we leave it to chance, it's not going to be, I think, the way we want it. And Avery's thoughts about balancing between people and the environment. You know, we need to be proactive about that because we can make a difference there. But if we're not proactive about it and we don't care about it, then we won't make a difference. Anyway, I just sort of came up with 5 sentences, and because I thought I only had 5, I tried to fit everything into the 5 sentences. So 1 was protect our environment and our waters for ourselves, future generations, visitors, and our economy. 2 was community that people feel good about living in. That was my reference to joy, where neighbors and villages are connected and all feel safe and part of the town. Preservation and enhancement of village character and historical relevance, and of a variety of housing types that are accessible to all residents. Town government that is effective, responsive, and open, and people who feel connected and make an effort to be informed. And also in that would be good schools and services. A community that is inclusive and values diversity of background, thought, income levels, et cetera, and cares for those in need.
I think I'll jump in on the joy reference, so I'll continue on. Again, just thoughts, because really I think Avery was right on target with everything. We will proactively protect our natural resources, ocean, ponds, estuaries, and open spaces, proactively protect our historic resources and the unique character of each of our villages, promote the safety of our community through access to clean water, access to health care, mental health resources, housing, and food security, facilitate communication, and I'm drawing on Avery here, between town and residents, village to village, and neighbor to neighbor, because that creates the community, I think, that we've all mentioned and that we're talking about, which leads to joy. And going back to that, I think we have to be inspirational. I think that this is the chance if not us, who, and if not now, when? This is the moment in time that we have to take a look at all this. So let's be joyful in some of our realistic goals and look at what we look like, 10, 20, 30 years down the road. Because we love this place, and that's why we're here doing this. I also wanted to put in a comment about supporting our local businesses, who in turn support our local families in a thriving and inclusive community. Again, that connected, thriving, not just living paycheck to paycheck, but thriving and enjoying those natural resources and the community that we do have here, including our historic resources and environmental resources as well.
You want to go next?
I don't know if my vision is, I think last meeting, I put up a show here for you guys, and I think my vision was done then, but I want to mention something about fairness. Fairness to me is participation of the entire community. Today we don't have that. We don't have opportunity for the underserved community to be here sitting with us and share the values and share the concern. And I don't have a 5 points, but I have just that to tell you. Give those people opportunity, because when they have opportunity, you're going to share culture. You're going to see how much they're capable of to share, to participate, and contribute to this town. And from my point of view, I say this all the time: broke English is not a sign of stupidity. You got to understand that. Mm-hmm. And people sometimes don't have the language, but they have the skills to contribute to the community. Simple as that.
Thank you, Carlos. Lindsay?
I basically come up with some statements that I need to put together a little better, but what we're actually doing in Barnstable at the current time is embarking on a 60-year plan to improve the environment that really covers one side of it, which is the saltwater embayments. We need in this town really to develop a comprehensive environmental resource plan that includes all of the other protections that people talked about continuously in these meetings we had. So what I would ask for is develop this environmental resource plan. I believe that's what Robert was getting to direct future development in the town. One of the great statements that come out of this a lot was the need to rebuild our village centers, these areas where we've got, businesses that have been operating out of old homes that need to be completely redeveloped. And that's where the infrastructure can support it, where the sewers are, where the electricity and the high-speed internet is. But we also need to include community housing. If I were saying going forward, that could be included in that type of plan. Then we have objectives we can measure against a lot of these things. We need to know how many houses we're going to try to build and where they're going to be, what type. But without a proper plan, I don't think we're ready for that. And one of the ones that I did like was the Brewster plan, because it really gave direction in those types of things. So that would be my statements to it. We need more planning.
Francis?
Mine is rather short. The town of Barnstable will provide a safe, healthy community for its residents. It will work to balance the needs of a clean environment, businesses, recreation, and appreciation of history and culture.
Woman of her word.
I'm concerned about what you said about we need to continue to grow. There's going to be a point where the town is going to have to stop growing because we're not going to be able to support more people.
Correct.
Katuitt in itself is almost at build-out. When I say almost at build-out, like 5 or 10, more houses, and then we're done. And so I'm not so sure that I think it's good to continue to, what's gone on in my lifetime, promote more businesses and more people coming to the Cape, because we can only support, environmentally with our water and our infrastructures and so many people. I left Cape Cod and went to Long Island for my medical education, and I was expecting Cape Cod. No. And I don't want Cape Cod to look like Long Island.
Thank you. Is everybody? Oh, Amanda.
I don't really have anything substantively to add, but I do like the idea. I really, really liked your statement, Bob, a lot, and I like that as the vision, and then having the bullets like Avery did. I think that makes it really, you connect with it, and then it's really easy to kind of see lay out the goals of how we're going to accomplish the vision. So.
Okay.
Um,
She did. She wanted to do it for the whole
I wanted
thing.
to do it.
Could I?
I see
mention
some
one
of you
thing is-
ripping your vision statements off. So one of the reasons I gave you a pad is so that I can take those home with
Uh-oh.
me. So please make sure that you don't take your vision because I'd like to keep it.
I think, too, one of the things that really doesn't get talked about as well, that I don't know if you can incorporate this into a vision, but certainly that there be an acknowledgement of the efforts and support, the continuation of the programs and of the legislation that's already been put in place to address some of these visions and some of these concerns. We have a housing plan. We have a water management plan. We have those things. Those are ongoing, and they're quite good, actually. So I'd like to somehow make sure that we acknowledge and incorporate the fact that there is a continuation of the plans that are already in place.
Valid point.
And also somehow the importance of our connection to the county, to the rest of the Cape. And maybe that's through the county. But, the county does so many things for us that, and I don't think people realize that, but in terms of planning, they also do a lot for us. So I think it would be appropriate to somehow acknowledge that as well.
I don't know if a town vision really needs to acknowledge that. That's more of a
doesn't-
process thing.
Yeah, it doesn't
down
have to
the
be
line.
right this
Yeah.
minute. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna read my little 5-paragraph things. They're small. It's not as good as Avery's, but we will be responsive to our residents' needs for a clean and healthy environment. We will be proactive in creating locally scaled and designed paycheck sustainable housing. Surprise, surprise. We will grow an educational system that causes all students to excel. We will provide essential infrastructure to balance our economy. We will maximize access to green and open space to support habitats and rejuvenate ourselves. We will create a safe and secure community for residents and visitors alike. And I did list some value words first that had nothing to do with what I wrote, what else is new, but I listed honesty, integrity, caring, sharing, communication, truth, and apolitical decision-making.
I like listing the values
For what that's
out,
worth.
too. Yeah, I like that a lot.
All righty, where do we
You all
go?
did very well. So I want to know if Frances, pointed out something that she heard that she didn't agree with. Was there anything else that anybody heard in other people's vision statements that you didn't agree with, or that you think is it's too undecided or controversial to be in the vision for Barnstable?
No, but one thing that Bob had said before that I think is important too is to, that this vision statement somehow, whether we say it or it's sort of inferred, is that for us to do this, we need the active participation of residents, whether it be by volunteerism on boards, volunteer in your community, in your village. I think something has to be said. It's almost a call to action. It can't be done by a small amount of people.
So you're saying you want the vision to have some sort of call to action?
Yeah, it goes two ways. People want their town government to be open and communicative and responsive. They can do all they want to, but if people aren't paying any attention, then, but a couple things that came up in my mind when I was thinking about this was, why do people think that their town government is unresponsive? because they do work really hard at that. And I thought, okay, so I'm new to Barnstable, and I live on a private road, which is a mess. And I don't know anything about how all that works. I just know that my road in my, that I moved onto is a mess, and the town isn't doing anything about that. And when I go to put my, trash cans out for trash collection, I find out that there's no trash collection, and I either have to go to the dump or I have to pay somebody. This kind of thing, if people don't.
They should have gone back to New Jersey.
Well, I know. But if this kind of thing, if people don't have any understanding about how the town, the services that the town offers and doesn't, and why they don't offer particular services, then, yeah, they're going to think that their town government isn't responding to them. So.
Well, my concern also about the respond to all the issues they have in town, especially the social issues that I mentioned before. So today we have people who have no food in the house, don't make 3 meals a day. That's what I mentioned last meeting. I have senior citizens today have to make an option, buy medication or buy food. So that's when I think the government should step in and participate in those people's life and try to help somehow. All the philanthropic organizations in town, they don't have enough resource in order to help them. So I think that's the government should be in place to cover that piece that's missing. That's how I think the government's not so responsive to the citizens.
Yeah, a different way of
I
responding.
also think when you talk about government, you need to specify whether you're talking about staff, you're talking about hired people, or are you talking about town council who are elected? I think it's really important to make that distinction.
What? You're what?
It smells like a cigarette in here.
Somebody smoking?
Does smell like a cigarette in here. You're right.
It smells like junior high school.
So actually, I was
must have
mentioning
spent a lot of
something
time
about
outside.
programs. The town should create
So
programs
you're
for
going to
that. So.
collect the
Yes.
things that we've written. Are you going to try to collate them?
Yes.
That would be my suggestion, because there'll be some things, there's some things that have come up uniquely in some of the people's, I think were very pertinent to try to correlate them.
Yep. Yeah, so a question for you all. In what you heard, did you feel like there was enough overlap and repetition and cohesiveness that you feel like there's a clarity of one vision statement there, or do you feel like we're not that close yet?
I think putting them together, we have one, yeah. If we put them together, I think we have a very strong mission statement. And I like you calling it a mission statement as opposed to a vision.
Well, so
statement.
it's going to be it's a vision statement.
Yeah,
A vision's
okay,
different from
all
a
right,
mission.
well,
and
fair enough. Okay.
So the mission is like what you're going to do. The vision is where you want to go.
Good point.
Oh,
Yes.
oh.
I'm about to maybe do that.
All right.
Not exactly, though. To Bob's point about it being future-looking, of course, it's a vision statement. It's meant to be looking to the future. And the word that is not, I didn't offer it to Bard, but the word that is in my head all the time is nimble. I don't think any of us can predict exactly what we think the town will be in 10 years. I mean, for so many different reasons. And I think that the town has to be able to be nimble, hence my resilient and adaptable.
So was there anything else that anybody heard that they don't agree with from something that somebody else said?
Joy. No,
You want to be dour. Our community should be dour and
I'm just
sour and
kidding.
horrible.
I'm
just
actually going to go the other way. I don't think that Francis's comment about the year-round population having basically different needs and different, we're different, I think, in a lot of ways than the summer population. And I think it's a really complicated thing on Cape Cod. And none of us have really acknowledged that in these statements, but I don't want that to get lost, because that's, you know, as someone who grew up here, you know, I spent summers being a summer person and winters going to school with, you know, being a winter person, and they weren't the same. I wasn't the same person in a way.
But one thing, as you've just pointed out, is you said that you were a summer person here, and then in winter you went to school. A lot of, I mean, there are a lot of people here who are native Cape Codders, but at the same time, there are people who started out as summer people or intermittent people. I mean, I was here like every 2 to 3 months for a week or two for the longest time. And then I made this my permanent home. So there's people who have become very dedicated Cape Codders who are full-time year-round residents who were at one stage, and I see Mark was kind of acknowledging this. Washer Shores, yeah. So there's a lot of those as well.
I'm a Washer Shore. I lived away for 20 years.
Okay.
But to Francis's point, it
Right.
is real.
Yeah.
It's very different.
Yeah, and there wasn't a lot of talk in those workshops about the role of your summer economy in the life of the town. It was very focused on,
You might have noticed lots of traffic and congestion comments. That would be a reference to,
Well, certainly if you were to ask people from off Cape, if you were to say, what comes to mind when you think of Cape Cod, it's certainly not industry. I mean, we are a
Or
tourist
manufacturing.
destination, yes. And to ignore that is, you know.
all right.
Can I just wanted to comment to Avery that when I, from Katuitt, came to Hyannis to go to junior high school and high school, I found out that the people in Barnstable were very different, Barnstable Village, very, very different than the people from Katuitt.
thus blighted, all right? There we go.
Felicia knows.
All right, so thank you all for your, I think you're getting punchy and we should move on. So I'm going to come around and I'm going to collect all your vision statements so that we can try to combine them into 1 or 2 coherent statements. And Jill is going to tell you about the next steps for other parts of the project. And then you'll get to go home. So thank you.
No, we have public comment still to come, so don't give up. Lindsay won't give it up.
All right. Good evening, Kate Maldonado, Assistant Director of Planning and Development. In the interest of time, I'm just going to keep rolling while we're collecting papers to be respectful of everyone's time this evening. So what I want to talk about next is publication of existing conditions. So you received an email this week with the draft existing condition report. So Barrett Planning Group, in collaboration with Horsley Witten have developed a draft existing conditions report. So that report reflects on existing conditions for the natural, the built, and the community systems here in Barnstable. It has informational narrative, it has data in the form of tables and charts, as well as supporting maps. It's staff's recommendation that the existing conditions report is posted online on the Barnstable LCP website on the document library page, which Jim shared at the beginning of this meeting, for public review and comment, to enable public review and comment to occur parallel at the same time as the committee reviews and comments on this existing conditions report. That would enable the committee to have a comprehensive review of all of the comments from both your members of the committee as well as members of the public in advance of your next meeting in April. So as long as the committee does not have any concerns with that, our recommendation would be to post the existing conditions report as soon as tomorrow. The report would be available for review by the committee as well as the public, so review and comment, which I'll talk to next. For as soon as tomorrow, leading up through a week in advance of your next meeting, so that way you'd have a full week to review
all of the comments that you've submitted as a committee as well as the public. So that way at your April meeting, you could discuss all the comments that were submitted and refine those comments and work to finalize that existing conditions report. I'll just walk through really quickly. So this is a template that Barrett Planning Group has provided us with for efficiently capturing comments from both the committee as well as the public. So on the form, so this will be available in 2 different formats. The first format will be, it'll be online as basically a comment form where you can type in and submit the comments, and then there'll also be a PDF that members of the public and the committee can download and print and submit a hard copy, whether in person here at Town Hall, via email. So this form, the comment matrix form, what we're looking for is basically there's a few different categories. So it would be if you've noticed that there is a correction that needs to be made. So that's C. If there's M, missing information, or O, all other. So what you would do is you would write the page that you've noticed that something's missing or there's a correction. You would write the comment code. So I'm sorry, this screen's a little bit hard to see. It'd be much easier online. So you would write the comment code. So whether it's a correction, it's missing information, or all other, you would write what your comments are and then add your source, so where you're obtaining that information from. So this would be the form that we as staff would receive to have an understanding of all the comments together with those 2 different forms, whether you populate it online or you print it off and write a hard copy. So the question that I posed to the committee is if you would have any concern with the existing conditions report running for review for both the public consumption and comment, as well as your committee review and comment leading up to a week in advance of your next meeting in April.
Anybody opposed to the public seeing this the same time we're seeing it? I think it's a great idea.
That doesn't require a vote, does it?
No, I think as long as there's consensus and no
Yeah.
concern. Okay,
We're good? Okay,
thank you.
great.
And there was just an example, but I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think that's good. All right, so she was talking about the next meeting, and since there'll be quite a bit to read and do, a date that was thrown out was April 27th, which is a Thursday, I believe, at same time, 5:30. How does that work? We want to get away from school vacation, et cetera, so that's why it's the end of the month.
I'm fine with, I'll make it happen for me.
All right, so we'll tell staff that that sounds good, and if something comes up, then you can communicate, all right?
27?
Yeah,
27,
5:30. The magic hour has come for public comment, and I'm sorry it's at the very end of the meeting, but if you have a comment, a question, would like to share your vision statement with us, the podium is yours. Roberta, your hand went down. Okay. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Betty Ledke, live in Hyannis. If nobody else is going to say something, I'll say something. I'm really impressed with the process here. I think the melding of what everybody produced is going to come up with something really nice. Some of the, when I was sitting in the back here when I first came in, I was in like a symposium, so to speak, on housing trusts. And one of the people in there said they had just put out a notice of funding availability, and they got 0 responses. And which seems curious because you think there'd be responses when you put out funding availability. And they felt their own self-assessment based on what they'd heard in the symposium earlier is that they had been too restrictive. And I think that's important as you write your vision, and I heard Avery use the word nimble, and I think nobody can predict the future. And if we're too restrictive in cataloging exactly what we want Barnstable to be, we may regret that. And I think, and I heard it so many times from you folks about the residents, and I love the discussion here about the summer residents and the winter residents, because I sincerely value the summer residents. My grandmother started coming here about 1900, as a summer resident, that's when everyone stayed in hotels. I mean, that was the way that things were done then. You came and you were in these hotels, and you came on either a stagecoach or the railroad. And then, we started building houses and things. So things have a dynamic. And I can also tell you, I had a woman in my house, it was a few years back, who was in tears, almost inconsolable, because she was going to have to sell her summer home. The family didn't have the prosperity anymore. So there's very deep passion on those who come in the summer, very deep passion, that they want to share that with, generations to come. And some that I know, they have to rent their homes, but they're just barely holding on. In the future, maybe they can live in them themselves, but they rent them. So let's not be too harsh on any demographic. And again, your comments about the people here and the needs, absolutely. So I think if you devote yourself to the residents and listening to them, then it will maybe even solve itself in terms of this perceived lack of communication. I also happen to be a town councilor, so I'm very sensitive to that, and I try to really reach out and be very open with my constituents. And really, I've had constituents from out the town of Barnstable talk to me. And then the final thing I would say is Barnstable is so unique. I think unique among all towns because of the services we have for the entire Cape. How many times do you drive out Willow Street to the Mid-Cape and have to pull over for an ambulance? Me, it's 100%. I've never been on that street when I haven't had to pull over for an ambulance. We have the ferries, we have the hospital, we have the airport, we have all the big shopping. So it's so I admire you, but please, it's such a complicated town. It very much is. And also, the last thing I'll say is, I lived in Washington. I've lived everywhere, but I lived in Washington, D.C. for a few years, well, more than a few. And when I first got there, I don't know if people have been to Washington, but like most big cities, it has a ring road around it. Mm-hmm. When I got there, they had high occupancy vehicle lanes just going to the ring road to get into the center, and really the center of the area. It went into the Pentagon, which is really a nucleus for transportation. So it went in there. And by the time I left, which was, maybe 15 years later, that HOV lane went down to Quantico. If people are familiar, that's where the FBI is and the Marine Corps base. That's probably 30 miles, which is roughly the distance between here and Plymouth, because they ran out of space. And to your point, sometimes you get built out. Sometimes you just do, and you got to reach out. So let's not get pigeonholed in thinking everything has to be within Barnstable. We can reach out because people come to us for their services. Maybe we will have to reach out for other things. So that's it. But again, amazing, the contractors, you guided them beautifully, and I'm very impressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Last call.
Bob Schulte from Centerville, also, I believe, an advisory committee member. I just want to compliment Felicia for doing an outstanding job of stepping in and leading this. I hope that the commission or the committee allows you to continue in this role going forward. And I just want to comment on some of the comments that Ms. Parks made. I agree with so much of what's been said, but I do think we have to have an acknowledgement that we are essentially on an island with finite resources. And while we need much of what's been discussed, we also have to keep that in mind unless we do want to become another Long Island or New Jersey Shore. I know people like Councilor Starr agree with me. He was in my breakout group at the March 1st, and one of the major concerns he had, as many of the people in our group, was, the overbuild and encouraging more and more people. We will change the character of what is the Cape and why people live here to begin with. So, thank you.
Thank you for your input. Anybody else?
Thank you, Bob. My name is Gordon Starr. I'm from Barnstable. I guess we're all from Barnstable. Thank you for working tonight. Thank you, Felicia, for such a great job. And it's sort of tough working in a fishbowl with an audience. Trying give you assignments to write, and you did a great job. And somebody just said that Betty said we can't predict the future. So what I see missing is climate change. Nobody's mentioned it. You know, we have the IPCC, we've got the state has particular goals for 2030, 2035, 2040, 2050. The county has a climate action plan. We need to commit to you know, jumping on the bandwagon here. You know, there are things we need to do, and it needs to be an umbrella or a lens we look at as we create any policy or any vision we have for the town. So
Good point.
keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Roberta, she's motivated.
Well, I wasn't sure what, Roberta Mock, I'm 80 Greenwood Avenue. Twin Brooks is right outside my bedroom window, and I feel the need to be a steward to protect the endangered migratory wildlife corridor that people don't realize is there. So I just had to bring that up. What Brewster did to protect the campground when my daughter went to Girl Scouts, I'm so grateful that Brewster did that. I'd like to see the town of Barnstable to be very strong for the environment, to have the courage, because it's a battle out there right now throughout our country. It's a battle to protect our natural environment. And so I just need to be a voice for that. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. No more comments? Thank you all from the public for coming and for staying the entire length of the meeting. Any other comments from committee members? Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Thank you.